Now, Christmas is on the horizon and it's festive season for all, so let's see how we're keeping it festive in the kitchen.
Yes, Palisa, I mean, it is that time of the year where a lot of ingredients are in season, and one of those ingredients happens to be figs. So if you like a good toffee pudding, then you're going to absolutely love our Christmas-inspired toffee figgy pudding recipe, because it is timeless and it uses one of the ingredients that a lot of people, I feel like, don't really understand. And we used to have a fig tree at home, so my grandmother used to have one in her backyard. So you've got some dried figs that you've got over there, but obviously you could use fresh figs as well. So all I'd like you to do is just add some hot water to your figs and your dried dates, so you can mix them together.
For everyone in Mzansi who's wondering what's in front of me,
yes,
these are the dried figs that Dumi was talking about. And I'm also adding them to the dates here.
Correct.
So just as Dumi has said, I'm going to add them to the dates. This is bicarbonate of soda.
Yes.
Also add that within the mix.
The reason for that, Palisa, is we're going to soak that in some water, some hot water. We basically, the bicarbonate actually help with the sweetness for the mixture that you're making there. And then the water basically plumps up the fruits, the figs and the dates there. The reason for that is because we don't want your whatever baked good you're making to get dry, because if you're using dried figs, it means it's going to absorb more as it bakes. So we're trying to avoid that. So we're putting the moisture in beforehand. Let it sit. We're going to give it about 3 to 4 minutes. While you do that, I'm going to cream together. I've got some softened butter that we've got here. So try to make sure you take your butter out sometime in advance so that it softens up, because if you use the hard butter that comes from the fridge, it's going to take you forever, and you don't want to melt it because it defeats the purpose. So we're going to cream together our brown sugar that I've just added in here and our butter. I've also got some vanilla essence that I'm adding to this mixture as well. All of this is basically going to get creamed together. This is where elbow grease is needed. If you have a hand mixer, you're more than welcome to use that. And what I do absolutely love is that we're pairing this amazing recipe with our Clover Classic custard. So we've creamed this mixture here, but you would have to cream it a little longer just so that it comes together better. But just to show you the steps, once this is creamed enough, we start adding our eggs one by one, because it's another situation of absorption. We want it to be fully incorporated before we add the rest of the eggs.
I like that. So we're not overwhelming the batter right now. We're just able to add the elements slowly but surely.
The second egg is going to go in. And if you'd like, some people like to mix the eggs ahead of time. I would suggest not, because you want to make sure you add it one by one. Unless you've got it already mixed, then you just add it a little at a time just to make sure it gets fully incorporated. I am now going to switch from my spatula to my whisk, because it's now starting to come together much easier.
But this is simple and easy. I mean, for myself, who's not much of a baker, it seems like this is something that I can easily whip up for my family.
Correct. Very, very, very correct. So what I'm going to do is, while I'm mixing this together, I'm going to get started on the toffee pudding part of our recipe, and that's basically the toffee sauce that's going to go on top of everything. So for that, all I need is some cream. So I'm going to start by putting that into our little saucepan, followed by some butter and some sugar. All we want this mixture to basically melt together and dissolve the sugar and actually thicken up to a nice toffee sauce. Some people want it runnier. It's completely up to you if you'd like that. Some people want it nice and thick, almost like a toffee. But I would suggest make it nice and runny, because we want it to absorb into our toffee pudding that we're making. Now we've done the wet ingredients. Now we're going into the dry ingredients. But before I do, actually, I almost forgot one very important step. May I ask you to blitz that all together?
Okay.
And then once you've done that, we'll pour it into this mixture here. And then to mix our dry ingredients, I've got some flour, a little pinch of salt, some breadcrumbs. So what we're doing now is a recipe that's not really that, I don't think it's popular in South Africa. It's a figgy toffee pudding, which most people aren't actually familiar with. But then we're pairing the two. We've got a toffee pudding and we've got a figgy pudding. So all I'm doing is I've mixed up my orange zest, my salt, and my breadcrumbs together. That's the dry ingredients. And then we're gonna add this into our wet and then whisk it all together, while we wait for you to just zhuzh all of that up.
And again?
And again, yes. Perfect. That is perfect.
This is the consistency we're looking for, Gail.
So all of this is basically, because of the kind of cake we're making a toffee pudding, the moisture is very important. So our wet ingredients are done, our dry ingredients go in, and this is where the elbow grease goes in. I'm just basically trying to make sure there are no lumps, but as we know with these kind of cakes, we don't want it to be stodgy. So I'm just going to fold this in together and make a nice little batch.
I'm also
of
going
our
to check up
sticky
here
toffee
to see how
pudding.
everything is melting together.
Correct.
So this is
That looks
essentially
good.
what we want.
Correct, Balisa. That's all we want. We want a nice little sauce that we're going to pour all over our dessert. And then that, on top of the custard that we're going to be putting it on, just makes it more luxurious and delicious. So if you remember, we were using here some flour. I actually just opted for self-raising flour. The reason for that is just to make sure that the leavening agent's in there, to make sure that it rises nicely and also stays nice and bubbly on the inside. So I'm going to go in with this one that we've already poured in here, put that into the oven, and I've got a nice hot one that we made a little earlier.
Looks so good. The aromas in the kitchen right now are definitely screaming festive season.
Correct. And the one thing I need to just suggest to people is when you're making this kind of recipe, make sure to add the sauce while it's still hot. The reason for that is because you want it to get absorbed into the toffee pudding. You don't want it to basically just be a glaze on the outside. So we're going to add this, and that's it, Balisa. Our sticky toffee pudding is nice and ready. All we're going to do is gooi our custard on top of it.
The best part.
The best part. And now, if that's not classic, I don't know what is. And if you want to get your hands on this recipe, go to afternoonexpress.co.za. But if by any chance you missed the steps, here's a quick recap.
Made with love by Clover.
So, we've had classic fashion from Timby, classic cars, thanks Chad, and we've seen classic hairstyles. And you, Michael? Classic!
A classic range from Clover. Timeless taste.
Made with love by Clover.